What is going on, guys? Let's talk about some Stamplar PvP. With Midyear Mayhem coming up next week, of course, I was going to post a Templar PvP video. So if you're new, consider liking this video and subscribing for all the Templar content. I got you guys covered for whatever role you'd like to try out for your Templars. And for my new subs, I'm so happy to have you guys. Welcome to the community, man. So I'd like to kick this video off with the playstyle that I'm going with. What kind of gameplay you guys can expect when running this Templar PvP build for Battleground specifically, some ICP, and you can even take it into Cyrodiil. We'll go into some champion points later, but we are going to be filling in the gaps with some of the frustrations and weaknesses that I've come across when playing Stamina Templars. And the first one's going to be mobility, and the second one is going to be range pressure. And I found a fun sweet spot for both. So we are going to be highly mobile, we're going to be roll dodging, we're going to be line of sighting, while simultaneously being able to pressure enemies from range just enough to keep them on their toes and eventually jump in and get the kill with jab. So if it sounds like something you're interested in, let's check out the build. So let's jump into some Imperial City non-CP to check out my stat sheet here. 48 points into stamina and 16 points into health is going to put us at about 25k health and 26k stamina. Our stamina recovery on the front bar is 1600. It's going to jump up to 1800 on the back bar with the Serpent Mundus and, of course, Dubious Food, which I find very valuable when we're playing non-CP PvP like BGs, but those can definitely be flexed out for something else if you're doing a Cyrodiil, for example. So our weapon damage is 4300. That's going to get buffed up when we use forward momentum to about 5100. And when we proc some of our weapon enchants, it's going to go up even higher, but we'll showcase that when we get to some of our sets that we're using here. Our physical pen is 6400, which is going to go up when we talk about Power of the Light and the skill tree. And our resistance is 10k and 13k unbuffed. We buff up with Rune, that's going to go up to about 16 and 19. So not very high, but like I mentioned, we are line of sighting. We're going to be doing a lot of roll dodging. Full medium build, things are going to hurt, but we can mitigate some of that by being as fast as possible. And we'll talk about that in a second. For our race, we are running Imperial for the extra sustain. So 6% reduced cost of all your abilities. That's all of your skills, stam and mag, and of course sprinting and roll dodging. And since we're constantly going to be on the move, I find that very helpful. An extra 2k max stam and max health makes this a really good choice. An alternative would be Orc for the extra weapon damage and of course the sprint speed as well and the sprint cost reduction. But I find the Imperial Red Diamond passive works for across all your skills, so that's why I'm running this instead. So the gear setup I landed on the heavy pieces, we're going to be Impen Tri-Stat. On the smaller pieces, well-fitted max stamina chance. All of them are medium. Ring of the Wild Hunt, Swift weapon damage, Infused weapon damage, Sharpened Poison Maul for the extra pen, and Master's Perfected Bow infused weapon damage. So I want to start with Ring of the Wild Hunt. I didn't realize how useful this was going to be until I actually slapped it on. It's one of the first mythics I've used, and I've never actually truly committed to using it because I didn't really want to use a mythic slot in a ring that gave me speed over something like damage. Well, for Templar specifically, man, we lack a lot of mobility. You can substitute some of that in for some Psijic abilities and some gap closers in the 2H line, but putting this on, I honestly never want to take it off. The speed in and out of combat is so huge that you'll notice when it's not on your bar anymore, and I miss it so much. So we're using Swift and weapon damage. You can honestly change that to Infused if you want, but I'm not going to argue against extra speed. So I want to talk about our back bar, Master Perfected Bow. The extra 103 weapon damage for the perfected version is nice to have, and that doesn't transfer to the front bar, unfortunately, when we swap. But what does transfer is that extra 330 weapon damage against targets affected by Poison Arrow. So we're going to talk about skills, but just to briefly talk about Poison Eject, it's a dot execute, which is nice, and it's going to deal that initial impact damage, and it's going to deal more damage over time after that. So it's a 2-for-1. And you're going to get extra weapon damage by simply applying this to one target, any targets, as many as you want. Very easy to apply, and you can control when you want it as well, which is why I really like it. And that synergizes really well when we swap over to our front bar. The Witch Knight set is essentially the Master's Perfected, but in set form. So you're going to get weapon damage, but then the 5-piece bonus, even more weapon damage for targets afflicted with a poison damage effect. Well, Poison Injection does just that. And the ceiling for this goes even higher when you consider that my gear is only purple. It's not gold. So that weapon damage is going to go up even higher than that. Now, I mentioned Poison Injection is a 2-for-1. It deals initial damage, and it does a dot for 10 seconds. Well, our final set bringing this all together is going to be Sheer Venom. So when you deal damage with an execute ability, you infect the enemy, dealing another dot over 6 seconds. So the Poison Eject dot lasts for 10 seconds. Sheer Venom lasts for 6 seconds. So you essentially can have 100% uptime on both of these. And this does scale with our weapon damage. So if we rally, that's going to go up to about 5k, which we're going to get that even higher when we talk about our back bar infused weapon damage enchant. It's insane amounts of weapon damage on specific targets whenever you want, but it's also extreme range pressure whenever you want on whatever target you want. And again, it's very easy to apply when you consider you're literally opening up every fight with Poison Inject to get that extra damage from the Perfected Bow, from Witch Knights, and of course, you need to proc your weapon damage enchant as well, and it's a lot of range pressure, and I absolutely love this. Just to show you guys how hard you'll be hitting unbuffed and buffed up. Unbuffed, we're hitting for about 2.5k. And actually, I'm running a poison damage enchant on this, and you can proc poisoned, but it's very rare. As you can see, it's giving me the damage, but it's not procking the effect like Poison Inject. See, it just procced. So our damage went from 2.5 to 2.7. But it is a very rare proc with the poison damage enchant, but it's still nice to have. But 2.5 unbuffed, if we buff up, you can see that's going to go up to about 3.4, which is really nice. So if we buff up, I'll show you guys the tooltip for Sheer Venom. 6.3 is pretty high. It's a lot of pressure, so it's going to be nice to have. So going into a fight, you're going to want to buff up with Rune, hit Poison Inject, make sure Rally's up, and then go to town. It's pretty good. You can see all those effects on the target. You have the damage over time from Poison Inject, Sheer Venom, and the Poison Status effect all going at once. And it's just a lot of damage, man. It's pretty sweet. So this is going to work for you guys as long as you can stay mobile. That's the one caveat to this build. If you can't stay on the move, if you can't line of sight, you're going to get nuked. But I think that's a risk worth taking. A lot of fun to play. Very, very fast play style. Let's go through our skills for this build. Poison Injection is the bread and butter of this build. Very high range, very easy to apply, absolutely needed. Love this skill. Good range pressure, man. Very, very cool. Resolving Vigor is our heal over time. 16k over 4 seconds is pretty good, considering our total health is 25k, so pretty big burst heal. Restoring Focus is going to give us some resistances and, of course, some stamina recovery too, which you don't actually have to be standing in the rune to get, so you pop this off cooldown, and we're going to get the benefits while we're running around with our ring on, which is nice. You're going to get some extra health when you stand in it, but you're not going to be doing that too often since we're going to be running around anyway. Repentance, you're going to get extra recovery just by slotting it, which is nice, but also when you consecrate some souls, you're going to get some extra health and stam too, which is huge in these PvP battles. Pretty good to have. And Extended Ritual, man, having a cleanse in PvP when you're getting dots and all kinds of debuffs on you, one button press gets rid of them is pretty good. Pretty expensive Magicka skill, but we don't have that many to begin with, so I would encourage everybody to run this too. I love Temporal Guard. Minor protection just by having it is really great, but stepping backwards in time 4 seconds it goes so much farther than you guys think when you consider the ring that we're using and the speed that we have. So 4 seconds is a long time. It's a lot of travel time. So you're going to be juking people left and right with this. It's going to save your life, and it's pretty cheap at 115 ultimate too. So I love it a lot. Our CC ability on the front bar is going to be Binding Javelin. Pretty self-explanatory. Good range. Throw this, knock them on their ass, and burst them down. Forward momentum for the buffs with weapon damage and stamina recovery is great, but the CC immunity every 4 seconds, we're going to be constantly be on the move, and knowing that I can't be snared or stunned is pretty huge, so I choose this over Rally. Power of the Light for the extra damage reflecting back, and of course the resistances with Minor Breach is nice to have. You could flex out Caltrops too if you want. I've gone back and forth with this, but I like the extra damage that this bursts back to the target too, so it's entirely up to you. Executioner is cool because obviously it's an execute, right? But it does proc also with Sheer Venom. So again, when you deal damage with an execute ability, you infect the enemy for 6 seconds. So Poison Inject can infect the enemy, and Executioner can infect the enemy as well. So for those times when you're in melee range and the target just won't go down, you pop an execute, it'll proc Sheer Venom. More pressure on the target is really great to have. The bread and butter of our melee range biting jabs. What's not to like about this skill? You're going to get major savagery. You're going to get some protection from the Ajax Spear passives. It's just a lot of damage and movement speed reduction in melee range. It's really good to have. Crescent Sweep is a great skill. And not only is it great because it does a lot of damage, but it also costs almost nothing. 67 ultimate is nothing. And I use this skill. I go back and forth, but I've landed on this skill over Dawnbreaker. Mostly because it's a little bit more forgiving in case you miss that initial sweep, because the additional magic damage for 6 seconds is attached to your character as opposed to where you landed the sweep. So I like it a lot. So it's very cheap, does a lot of damage, and you're going to constantly notice this coming back up off cooldown, man. It's a lot of damage up front, and the extra damage over time is great to have too. Let's talk about CP. If you're not running Battlegrounds, for example, and decide to jump into Cyrodiil, Steed's Blessing, 20% movement speed is pretty huge when we're considering pairing it with our ring. So you're going to be moving at like the speed of sound. It's pretty fun. So Treasure Hunter, Rationer, and Liquid Efficiency in this tree too. For the blue tree, Duelist rebuff is 10% damage reduction against single target attacks, 10% damage reduction against area effect attacks, Thaumaturge to boost our dot damage, and Biting Aura to boost our jabs damage. Balanced Vitality for extra health, Rejuvenation for the extra recovery. Slippery, 1 free CC break every 21 seconds is going to help us save some stamina and stay on the move, which is huge for this build. And also Expert Evasion, same concept as Slippery, 1 extra free dodge roll every 30 seconds is pretty big for us. So if you are running Cyrodiil, for example, I would make a couple of changes here. Maybe swap out Serpent for the Lover, or maybe the Shadow for some more pen or weapon damage. And I like Dubious Food. I still might run this in Cyrodiil, but you might want to consider swapping it out for Sugar Skulls or Crown Fortifyings, for example, for more max stats. So just a couple of reminders for the outro of this video. Keep up Rune for your defenses. Keep up Power of the Light. Keep up Major Brutality with forward momentum. Keep your heal up, cleanse those dots, repent after every single kill to restore those resources, and stay on the move. Know when to break line of sight. It's such a fun experiment deciding when I want to engage or break combat and reposition and jump in again, because sometimes it works and you throw them for a loop because you're so fast, and other times you just get absolutely nuked down. But that's the trade and that's the risk I'm willing to take with this build, and I find it very, very enjoyable. So if you're a new player jumping into Elder Scrolls Online PvP, please give this build a shot, but again, it's going to come with some practice. You're going to have to get used to some things. Let me know how it goes. Guys, that's the build. I very much appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. For all my new Templars, man, it's good to have you. Welcome to the community, and until next time, guys, I'll see you on the next video.